Welcome back to Just One Question. And it's been a while since that's been literally true. So there may be two questions, just saying. Anyway, I am really excited about my next guest because Jim Schleckser is founder and CEO of the CEO Project. We've already got two CEOs working here, which builds CEO advisory groups. Yeah. And we know CEOs need that. And author of Great CEOs Are Lazy, which is the best book title I've heard in a long time. And then the other one, which caught my imagination, and we almost didn't get this recorded because Jim mentioned that he's a sommelier and he's written a book called Professional Drinker. And so we started talking wine and almost, as I say, forgot to press record. But here we are. Welcome, Jim. I'm delighted to have you on the show. How the heck are you doing?
I'm doing great, Nick. Thank you so much. And we could do another one just on wine if you want to. I am all in on that. So.
I do want to do that one. I've got lots of questions to ask.
Yeah.
But until that day, that happy day, we're going to stick to more professional concerns, although it is professional for you. But we're going to stick to more traditional professional concerns. And I'm going to ask you, so what are you excited about these days? And in particular, is technology playing a larger or a smaller or the same role in your life right now?
Yeah, and it's the ChatGPT question. I get it everywhere that I go. What is it? Should I be worried about it? Am I going to lose my job over it? I mean, there's just a huge amount of uncertainty, which there always is in the beginning of a technology when it's buzz and interesting, and I don't want to miss it. What we've been talking to our CEOs about is you got to be careful about technologies that are looking for a problem to solve. I think blockchain in many ways was a technology looking for a problem to solve, and it sort of nominally solved a couple of interesting problems, but it never became the thing that we all thought it was going to be. Well, it's going to take over real estate and government, and that didn't happen. So I think we've got to be a little bit careful, particularly at the CEO level, right? Because we could jerk our organizations around if we're not careful, chasing rabbits. And so when we talk to CEOs about ChatGPT in particular, say, look, start with the business case. It's great to go fiddle around with it and say, write an email and so forth and see what it can do. Absolutely. Because learner is one of the hats in Great CEOs Are Lazy, and CEOs need to be learning all the time. So absolutely go figure it out. But the meta question that we should all be asking ourselves is, what is the business use case for this technology? If you can't come up with a really compelling business use case, it's going to save me $100,000 by doing this, or $1 million by doing this, or I don't need 10 people that I have doing some task, then there's no there. And at the moment, the use cases are still a little thin on the ground for ChatGPT. I think they're coming. There's a couple that are coming. There's like coding seems like it has some interesting opportunity. But I'll give you an example. I went back to school and I'm working on. You got to be careful with it too. It's not everything you think it is. I'm writing a dissertation. I said, well, this will be interesting. Write me a chapter 1 with these parameters on this topic. Give me citations and so forth. And so I get a very specific question. And starts typing away, and and I read it. I'm like, beyond the fact that it's a little stilted in the language, it is reasonably credible stuff. And interesting enough, there were 2 citations that it made. Said, so and so said this, and so said this. I'm like, I have researched this topic for 6 months, and I've never found those authors. I'm like, I'm going to go look them up. You know what? It made them up.
The hallucination.
It hallucinated it basically, because it's a correlation engine. It said, well, there should be a paper by these authors with this topic, so I'm just going to put it in there, but it doesn't actually exist. So I think in really mission critical stuff, we've got to be very careful that there is some level of oversight to the content that's developed, because it is far from perfect yet at the moment. Right? So that's my thing. Like, find me the business use case, explain me to that, and then tell me how the technology can fix it or make it better. Now I'm interested. And at the moment, it's on the buzz side. It's not on the business use case. So that's where we've been going on that particular technology. And you, interestingly enough, if you look at the data on ChatGPT, you're starting to see searches go down, utilization go down. It feels like it peaked out, and now we're starting to come down to some stabilizing level. We're not there yet, but so it follows the trend I'm talking about.
Thanks. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate the insight from the CEO level, and I think focusing on where's the value is an important thing to do. I can't resist a follow-up question though, because it seems only fair. I feel like I'm underutilizing your great experience and insight if I don't ask the question. One of the things I've been fascinated about in the past 5 years or so is the shortening lifespan of CEOs. The job gets tougher in some ways, and presumably, and the lifespans get shorter and shorter. And of course, who the CEO is has enormous ripple effects for the rest of the organization. So it's not just about the uncertainty that the CEO is facing, but it creates more uncertainty in the organization itself. And so what would you say is the single biggest issue facing CEOs that perhaps contributes to this shortening lifespan? Why is it suddenly, or why is it gradually becoming such a difficult job?
It's the internet. So what I mean when I
so
say
it is
that,
technology.
It totally actually is. But more specifically, it's the transparency developed. So if you go back 15, 20, 30 years, there was such a low level of transparency about the decisions and what happened and the data, the outcome. And so the cycles to have decision making occur were elongated because the information was not available. The information cycle was not there. And I think because the information cycles have tightened, I mean, there's a fire in Maui. You knew about it within hours of the fire in Maui, right? So that's the same thing that's happening to CEOs. Every decision they make is transparent and scrutinized. Every move they make is transparent and scrutinized, subject to second guessing, even for people who don't really understand the job, or some that maybe do. And then the outcome is visible the second, particularly in public companies, the second it comes out, everybody knows. Everybody has the ability to correlate the decision and the outcome. And so you're in a petri dish being studied like CEOs have never been studied before. I mean, it's become, I mean, I know the compensation is there, but it's probably it is a lot less fun job than it used to be. I actually prefer private companies for this reason, because they lack some of that intense scrutiny. It's almost like, would you ever want to be president of the United States?
No, thank you.
Exactly right. Because why? Because you're going to live in a petri dish. The same thing's true for the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Your life is no longer your own. You have sacrificed your life at the altar of that company, every move. And so I think that's why the cycles have shortened. Shareholders have become more activist. And I think it's put a pressure on CEOs to say, look, I got to get in and I got to move fast. I need to come up with my plan. I got to execute it immediately, and I got to start showing results, or I'm going to be asked to leave. And that's not necessarily healthy, because there are some bigger rocks that we have to move as CEOs that don't move quickly. And so when we got this intense short-term focus and we got a big rock to move, we go, how do I do both those things that I buy time to move the big rock that'll actually profoundly change the organization? It's a problem. This speed, it really is a problem. And I think you've nailed a real issue there, though.
You know, somebody's got to pay attention to the long term, and it's harder and harder to do. Yeah.
And if it ain't the CEO, who's going to do it, right? Nobody.
All right. So one last question.
I'm changing the name of your podcast.
Thank you. And it needs to be done. You're the guy to do it. And this is entirely your fault. So you wrote the book with that fabulous title, Great CEOs Are Lazy. How, in this environment that you've just been describing, can a CEO be lazy? How? Give me even one idea and I'll be grateful.
So the central idea of the book basically is that it comes from a guy named Eli Goldratt, who is an Israeli physicist. He wrote a book named The Goal, and he talks about this, what's called theory of constraints. And any system you can name, there is a point of constraint that controls the whole system. Think about a garden hose. Got a garden hose. A garden hose is supposed to put water from one end to the other. Pretty simple system. But yet, if there's a kink in the hose doesn't do its job. So if I'm trying to get water out the end, what do I need to do? Well, I need to find the kink, and open it up to get the water out the other end. Well, a business is a system, just like a hose. Somewhere in your business, anybody who's listening, there is a kink in the hose. There is a point of constraint that controls the performance of the whole system. So the job of the CEO is to find the kink and open it up. And that's it. Everything else is extraneous. And so people that are really good at this, that really get that in their gut, they go, as long as I'm spending time either finding the kink or fixing it, I am doing the highest possible value work that I can do in this organization, and I need to minimize everything else. And really where this came from, Nick, is when I would talk to a CEO and I go, how many hours a week you working? They go, 80. I go, to myself, I didn't say it to them. I said, you're not a very good CEO. You're not in control of your time. I talked to another CEO. They go, I don't know, 50, 55, because it is not a 40-hour-a-week job, right? I go, okay. And then you go, what are you working on? Well, right now I'm working on restructuring my sales force, for these reasons. And then I think in 6 months, I'm probably going to be over to operations because we'll have so many orders, we don't know what to do with them. They're rotating, looking at the kink and opening up progressively. That's what a really great CEO does differently. Why does it look like it's lazy? Because they're not working 80 hours a week. They're working 55.
Wow. Jim Schleckser, everybody. Nailed it in with clarity and a real understanding of the job. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you being on Just Three Questions, and go forth and let's schedule that professional drinking discussion for next time. But thank you very much for being on.
That would be my pleasure. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for the time.